Go ahead and get started. 6:31, call a meeting. Is called to order today on February 14th at 6:32 p.m. And Josh was supposed to be the timekeeper. So would anybody else like to volunteer?
I can do it until Josh joins us if you'd like.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Diane. Public item 2 on the agenda, public appearance for non-agenda items. Scott, is there anybody in the chambers?
No, sir, there is not.
Okay, thank you. Item 3, approval of the minutes, the draft minutes from January 10th, 2022. Has everyone had a chance to look at them? And if so, are there any comments, addition, changes, edits?
First, I think we first need a motion to approve.
Oh, okay, that's right.
I make that motion.
I'll second Diane's motion.
Okay.
I just have one comment.
Okay.
Item 5D, the bold part, the word whole, WHOLE, W should be capitalized.
And 5D.
Oh, in the item title. Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise, I thought you did a nice job. Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, they do look good, Phil. Any other discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes from January 10th, 2022? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay. None opposed. The minutes are approved. Okay. Item 4, new business agenda items. Before us, we have resolution R-18-22, adopting the ARPA/TID number 6 closure investment plan. And tonight, who's going to be presenting that, Bill?
I can actually present it if Bill, you're welcome to as well, but.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I've been in all of the meetings, so I can give the recap.
Gabriella, would you like me to put it up on the screen, or do you just want to talk through it?
No, I think I can just talk through the process.
We introduce it, then we'll make a motion to approve it.
Yep, I'll move approval.
I second.
Okay, open for discussion.
So we talked a little bit about this last time, but going back to the beginning, there's 2 buckets of one-time use money that's coming into the city this year. One is the American Rescue Plan Act funds. That is federal funding that's specified to COVID-19 recovery, pandemic recovery, but it's a little bit broader than that. It can be used more widely than just COVID-19 impacts. And we have about $3.2 million in ARPA funding. We are also this year closing the tax increment district number 6. And we have money left over in the tax increment district after we redistribute to all the municipalities and close out the remaining costs. There's about $2 million left over. And kind of unusual to have both of those amounts of money coming in at the same time, but given the uniqueness of the situation and the amount of money, what had been done is we put together a spending plan. And really it functions similar to the budget process in that there are some similar steps, but it's much more early phase. So the spending plan is not necessarily keeping to a specific budget, although the items that are included do have general costs associated with them. But after the process is complete, that spending plan will be a document that the staff can then look into what the options are, how much things actually cost. During the CIP process in mid-year, we'll put some of those things on a time horizon. And then also in budget process, we'll budget for things in next year as appropriate. So some of those things might not end up being funded in the very end, but it's a plan. And
Gabriella?
next, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are there any spending conditions on each of these?
Yes. So for TID money, essentially, no. There's no spending conditions once that money comes back to us. When the TID is open, it's dedicated to economic development in the district. But now that it's closed, that money goes back to the general taxpayers in the city.
Okay.
And then the ARPA funding does have specific requirements, which were reviewed at a committee of the whole meeting. But there is a little more flexibility than we even expected. So, the finance director is going to do our best to utilize the money. So, unfortunately, we're at the part of the process where we're past alder amendments. So nothing additional can be introduced in the plan at this point. But the alder amendments have been submitted. They will be released, I believe, this Thursday. And then there will be a process where we'll have a public hearing, discussion, adoption of the amendments, and then adoption of the plan. And this is coming before all the commissions for input. And you can take a look. There are sustainability. There's a whole section related to sustainability, which puts additional funding to some of the things that I have advocated in the past, including more funding for the sustainability plan, more funding for the hybrid electric vehicle fund, some of the items of that nature that are relevant to RCC. And some of my amendments that will be coming out later this week will also be related to sustainability.
Okay. Those aren't available to look at now, are they?
No.
Okay.
I believe the 27th, so I think that's, oh, sorry, 17th, the 17th, so I think that's Thursday. They'll
Okay.
be released.
Can you briefly tell us what amendments you submitted?
I can kind of give you just like I don't want to get too deep into them, just because we haven't finalized, but put some more funding in for solar panels, some tree money, so money to deal with the emerald ash borer problem, and also do a tree inventory for the city. Looking to do a solar shelter in a city park. Hold on, let me pull up what I put in. And hopefully we'll update street lighting to LED lights. That hopefully I've suggested that we use this money for that so we can reap the cost benefits right away, although that's already been laid out in the CIP, and I know Phil has talked about that extensively, and a couple other items as well.
Looking at Phil's renewable analysis report, and and I noticed there was a big spike in gasoline usage. So hopefully we can get more electric vehicles in the city's fleet, so we can reduce that dependency on gas.
Yeah, so I requested in the original discussion that the mayor include that in his original spending plan, and he did. So additional, I don't know exactly what the dollar amount is, but the plan intends to put more money into that fund, and I will always be advocating for that to be on the higher end. And we will, the finance director is also closing out the books for last year, and if there is leftover gasoline funding, which I don't anticipate there will be, that will go into the hybrid electric vehicle funds. I'll let you know what happens with that. But yeah, so I can give you kind of a better sense of everything. But I would encourage you to, if you want to come to any of the public hearings to advocate for any of the amendments, or just find out how it goes, I can certainly give you a summary at the next future meetings about how that turned out. And Phil, Bill, if you have anything to add, please jump in.
Have you seen the amendments from the other alders, or?
No.
No, okay. It's all secret, huh?
Yeah, we typically try to stay out of each other's just for a quorum.
Okay.
Quorum reasons, yeah.
So can you tell us if the plans for the road construction, is that primarily existing roads? Are we spending it? Are you planning on using that money to build any new roads?
No, they're for existing roads in the, I forget what you call it, they used to be low moderate income blocks, but those are the streets that we are programming out to be resurfaced within the next 5 years or so.
Okay.
That we would use that funding to bring that forward and get those done earlier.
Okay. No new construction.
No new construction.
Good, thanks.
Okay. Hey, Josh.
Everybody, sorry I'm late.
Well, for being late, you're now the timekeeper.
Got
You
it.
originally proposed to be the timekeeper, but Diane stepped up and said, as soon as you join, Josh can take over. So
I'm
Got
passing the baton, and you should know that we're currently on schedule.
Okay. Thank you. Well done, Diane.
You got a
Thanks.
lot to live up to.
any other discussion on this of this resolution? If there's no other discussion, we'll take a vote on approving the resolution R-18-22. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. No, no one opposes, so therefore it's approved.
By the way, I was thrilled to see that lighting fixtures in City Hall might finally be upgraded to LED.
Yeah,
That's
great.
That's been a pet peeve for years. I'm thrilled to see that in there.
Yeah. Okay, next on the agenda, items under new business 4B, resolution R-03-22, authorizing Dane County Services for stormwater permit review and inspection in 2022. Before we have a discussion, I'd like to have them hear a motion to approve this resolution.
I move that we approve it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Kim seconds. Okay, open for discussion. I guess who's going to introduce what's Bill or?
I can do that. Yep.
Okay,
This is our annual allocation that we're using for Dane County to do our stormwater erosion control permit inspections and the stormwater reviews. We are in the process of hiring staff to eventually take this over later this year, but we need this to as an ongoing expense for us to be able to do the inspections and the stormwater reviews for development.
so eventually this will be an activity that the city will take over. And the city's budgeting for a new person for this activity or training someone in-house.
Yes, we are going to be hiring a new staff person for this. We were allocated a part-time person, and then Claudia decided to be part-time. So we are advertising for the full-time person. I think we've had 4 applications in, and they're under review right now. And hopefully we'll have somebody up and familiar with how to do the whole process by the 3rd quarter of this year.
Okay,
So the person who will take the position that Claudia had, that person will be conducting these inspections?
No, the stormwater engineer or technician will be doing the inspections. The engineer will be doing the reviews of the plans, any enforcement that needs to be done. So the technician is actually going to be doing more of the inspection.
will this technician do other inspections as well?
Yes, they do some inspections for the subdivisions currently, and a lot of the stormwater engineering, the part of the permit, part of that's being done right now.
Okay,
So Bill, in addition, okay, we have Claudia's former position and then the new part-time, which Claudia is taking, and then this will be a 3rd position? Is that what you're saying?
No. We have an engineering technician right now, stormwater tech, that's doing the environmental, the refuse recycling, sustainability, the stormwater, and part GIS, but that's more GIS than stormwater.
Mhm.
So we're in the process of interviewing for stormwater for the GIS position currently. And when that happens, they're going to be taking over more of the position that the engineering tech is doing.
Okay,
So that would free up the time to be able to do those inspections again.
good.
okay. And how, in the past, how has Dane County done on these reviews and inspections?
They're very good. They're timely. They're consistent across the board. So it's been a good, working relationship with them.
Okay, do they submit like a monthly report on their inspections or is it an annual report? I've never seen one.
It's an annual report. I can hunt that down and share it with you.
Yeah, I'd like to see one.
Okay.
Kind of curious. Okay, any other discussion on this resolution? If not, I'd like to take a vote on approving resolution R-03-22. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. None opposed. The resolution is approved. Okay, next on the agenda is item 4C, the spring water rate cleanup date. I think we have to set a date up for this bill and get consensus from the commission here on when that date's going to be. I think in our last meeting, we were talking April, to look at the minutes. I don't know if we set a date.
I don't recall us setting a date yet. I think we might have been talking about the spring cleanup, maybe.
The shred event is set for April 9th.
Okay.
The shred and recycle.
The shred event's April 9th.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, one thing I noticed from last year, from last year where we did the spring cleanup, it's better to do it before the leaves come out.
Yeah.
Easier to see the trash and easy to move among the bushes and everything. And the water level isn't all that high yet. So, but April 9th is the shredding event. If we have another event in April, you think that's going to be too much, or?
Well, we usually have 2 events in April, so I don't think it's too much. The following weekend.
Calendar. What about
easy.
near Earth Day?
Like the 23rd. I think you just want to do it, like you said, before the leaves come out.
Yeah.
And also before the mosquitoes come out.
Yeah.
I do want to note that the tree advisory is doing some events on April 30th for in celebration of Arbor Day. So the final details aren't out for that, but that's happening.
Okay, so either the 16th or the 23rd.
The 16th is Easter weekend. I don't know if that'll affect
Yeah.
turnout. It seems to me we did it Easter weekend last year, and maybe it didn't affect turnout.
We had a good turnout.
Yeah, I'm thinking for me, I'm gonna have to do it on the 23rd for the Swan Creek one. I know that I'm out of town on the 2nd, 16th, and maybe the 30th as well. So
I mean, 23rd looks good to me. How about everybody
it
else?
gives a little spread from the other event that we're having that month.
Yeah.
And like Diane was saying, we typically do have it in this month. We just typically don't have a meeting in April, and this is why, because
Okay.
we put a little bit more effort into the waterway cleanup and then the shred event.
Okay. So how does April 23rd look for everyone?
I'm going to be out of town, but last year I did clean up solo anyway, and I'm happy to do that again.
Okay. All right. Well, so let's shoot for April 23rd then for the spring waterway cleanup. And we could discuss further details.
Okay, so I mean, people should be in a good mood.
Yeah. We just need somebody from the city to help coordinate like Claudia did last year. The cleanup, the orange vests and the bags and everything, the boxes that the team leaders would come pick up. So, I mean, I could help you with that, Bill or Phil.
How many groups are there usually? Like 3 or 4?
See, I had one.
5 or 6, I think.
Yeah, I think
It's
5 or
pretty
6.
typical.
Yeah. We each had a box and to come over to City Hall and pick it up. Essentially, the boxes consisted of orange vests, plastic bags, rubber glove, surgical gloves.
Sure. Yeah, we've got the boxes. I was just wondering, how many we had to get prepared for that, and who is going to be the team leaders, like you were saying, so we know in advance how many boxes to prepare.
Okay. Yeah, I can do team lead the same place I did last year, so over by Dutton Lake. So
I'll do Corey Hill again.
okay.
I'm doing Swan Creek.
Versus Swan Creek.
There's always a lot of trash along the creek that goes along Capital City Bike Trail, sort of past the golf course and then over to McKee Farm, over to McKee PD. I think, did you do that last year, Josh? Or did you do that, Phil? Somebody did that last year.
I didn't
No.
know.
And Nate,
No, I don't think Nate did it. But anyway, there's always a lot of trash there. I was planning on where they did that new construction by Fish Hatchery and the golf course. They put a pedestrian bridge there. There was a lot, when I cleaned there 2 years ago, there was a lot of stuff to pick up. So I thought I would check that out.
Okay,
But I think you should keep in mind that the creek that goes along, Yarmouth Greenway.
mm-hmm.
And do you feel like a second team there, or do you feel like further down that spillway, like along the McKee Farms Park area? Like, what do you think makes sense?
Actually, I've seen a lot of litter south of PD along that Yarmouth Greenway. There's like a block or two between there and whatever that street is between the credit union and Pizza Hut, whatever that street is. There's some there. And then just north of PD on Yarmouth Greenway, that section for maybe not quite to the condos, so a couple blocks is usually pretty bad. And then the creek itself, like from where the Capital City Bike Trail goes under Longford, that part I can usually get just when I take my dog for walks.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely focus on the stretch that's more in like the Yarmouth Greenway, kind of where it crosses PD there. We could maybe even do like kind of 2 sections on each side of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Maybe we could have a map available for the next meeting and just review this.
That'd be really helpful, yeah.
Okay. Bill, I don't know how easy it is for the city to get some of those things you can use to pick up things in the ground, those extender things. Those were really handy last year for reaching under bushes and stuff like that to grab. I don't know if the city has any of those, or I brought some that I had for people to use. So we don't have to have one for everybody. It'd be nice to have at least one per team. I mean, do we budget for this, don't we? Every year for these type of things? So,
Yes.
we do.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I think, Ron, we wanted to establish the date, and it sounds like we got preliminary plans on who's doing what.
Yeah.
I'm assuming Will would be maybe joining up with somebody just to kind of see it for his first year through it.
Okay.
So he can kind of pick, I don't know where he lives, so he could kind of choose the one, that's closest to him or whatever one works for him.
Is this a new incoming member? Sorry.
Who's this?
Well,
Will
Yeah.
Bussey.
Yeah. Well, okay.
He's a new member. He came to the
Okay.
last meeting.
Oh, that's right. Are we full at this point now too, or are we still looking for one more?
We are full.
I think it would be helpful to get this on the city webpage, the date, and have a contact person for any organizations or individuals that are interested in helping.
And what about the Fitchburg Star? We usually publicize that.
We do when it gets a little bit closer, but let's see. I think that would be the best timing for that would probably be the April issue because it's just a little bit before. Otherwise, people forget. But
Okay.
for
Yeah.
now, if we can just get the word out that this is when we're doing it, and I can't remember exactly how it's been phrased in the past, but we've had church groups step up and pick their own weekend and do cleanups, and we've had some. I think Target had a cleanup a couple years ago. So if we can just get the idea out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we covered, kind of our areas that we've looked at. But it would be nice if like one of these groups comes forward, like a church group or somebody.
Scouting group.
Or another business wants to come forward, like I think this is one of the things that we talked about last year was we should establish some locations that, need a cleanup, and then, see, who can step up, whether it's an organization or a business within the community, to go and clean up those areas and contribute to this effort if they'd like to. But the timing of the event is good around, they could even do it on that Friday afternoon if they wanted to, which would be Earth Day. But I think if we put it, a little bit more into talking about that and mentioning that possibility and establishing places that need to be cleaned up, I think that people would step up and we could have more of an impact than what we are having with it.
Yeah, I think correct me if I'm wrong on this, I haven't participated in these events yet, but the one difficulty with if groups do use a different day as their cleanup event, that makes it a little bit more difficult in terms of equipment pickup and drop off for city staff, because I do believe there's a public works vehicle that's going around and actually distributing and collecting that. So if it's all done on the same date, that's easy enough for public works to coordinate. If groups decide to go with, Friday the 22nd or Sunday the 24th, I don't remember in the years past if we've done that, if that means that they are coordinating with someone at City Hall to pick up and drop things off at a different time. But that would be something we'd have to look into.
You might want to check with Claudia when she comes back, because I think 2 years ago, or maybe 3, we had other organizations doing this, and I don't know exactly how they coordinated, the pickup. But I think if they let Claudia know when they're doing it, then she just contacts whoever from the city that needs to swing around and pick up the stuff.
I do believe we did that in 2020 because of the pandemic. And at that point, we were still, everyone was really cautious about shared contact on items. And so we were trying to minimize equipment handoffs. So we did modify how we did the event that year, but I don't remember the details. I can look into our minutes from past meetings or checking with Claudia when she returns.
Good.
I remember last year just telling Claudia where our waste was for Swan Creek.
Okay.
And she, had somebody come and pick it up on Monday morning. So I just indicated where it was located.
Okay.
Hey, Will.
I will.
Oh, there's Will. Okay. Hey, Will. We were just talking about the spring waterway cleanup, and we've given you a part of the city to do.
I'm all in.
We've tentatively set aside, we set aside April 23rd for that date near Earth Day. And where there's typically there's team leaders that will lead certain areas of the city and focus on cleaning up, like along Swan Creek, Dunn's Pond, Corey Hill, other areas by the golf course. So if there's any area that you think you might like to lead as a cleanup, let us know. And also reaching out potentially, the people that would be part of that cleanup, if we can recruit some additional volunteers or, businesses that might want to enlist their staff to be part of the team, that would be great. Usually we have a team leader to lead each of those areas.
I think it's important to note that the people cleaning up don't have to transport whatever they pick up back
Right.
to their residence and put in their receptacles, that the city will pick it up. So, for the people who've never done this before, you don't have to carry it back with you. We just have to let the city know where we left it.
Yeah.
Also, I think, Ron, that we generally do it from 8:30 to 10. Is that right?
Yeah.
Does that sound?
Yep.
Okay.
Or 9 to 11. Yeah, I thought we do it.
9 to 11?
Typically do it from 9 to 11. Yeah,
Okay.
Swan Creek, but I think it's flexible how people want to do it.
Okay. The only thing they carry is we carry it back from the place to the site where it will be picked up. That's the only place we'll only carry it involved.
Yeah. We had a couple, when it was Nate's first year, he trucked it all the way back to his house. So I just don't want anybody to think that they have to do that.
I'll make sure I mention it at council and see as soon as we have information, I can send it to the alders and see if they can start sharing it with their constituents.
Okay,
And all the-
that would be great. Thank you. Yeah.
Also, Rick Eilerson helped last year. Maybe he seems to follow things pretty carefully, so maybe he'll also volunteer to do it. We don't have anybody in the Duns Marsh area this year, so that's another that always needs cleaning up. So another potential site.
Okay.
I'm pretty flexible, so if there's a need for a team lead in a certain area or a volunteer, you can just plug me in wherever is needed.
Okay, great. Okay, any more discussion on the spring waterway cleanup? Okay,
I think we'll just nail down details at the next meeting. Ron.
next meeting, right, yep.
And then if people can, in the meantime, between this meeting and next meeting, just look at locations around waterways that might need to be cleaned up, and we can just kind of confirm our locations
Right.
at the next meeting and get the maps and coordinate logistics on, equipment. That would probably be good.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks.
Phil or Bill, is it possible to get on the radar of getting posts on social media? Just get on the calendar for however that works. Could you? Okay, great.
Yep.
Also, I want to point out that the city provides rubber gloves, or other kinds of gloves. So, I mean, people can bring their own certainly, but there are a lot of masks littering everywhere. So definitely want to have something over your hands.
Right, yeah.
Yep, and we would make sure to, at least in social media posts, I don't know that there'd be space in like the newsletter section of the Star, but yeah, certainly in social media outreach, we'd make sure that that's clear that equipment is provided.
Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, it looks like we're pretty much on schedule. Next item under new business, item 4D, and look forward to this discussion, is the 2021 Energy Benchmarking and Renewable Analysis Report. Hopefully everybody had a chance to look at it. It's a lot of good information there, so I'll turn it over to Phil.
Yeah, so I was hoping to have this a little bit further along. The spreadsheets that I was using, I don't know if you remember last year, we got some really great work put together by those UW grad students that worked with me at their spring semester. And so they sent me their spreadsheets. I was pretty busy most of the summer, and in around December when I started digging into this to start putting this report together, I found that the files they sent me, none of the formulas and references to other spreadsheets held. So I've been I'm taking their template, I'm sort of rebuilding it all manually. Not to garner sympathy, just it's going to take a little bit longer than I'd hoped. So the last couple of years, I know our annual reports have been ready around like July or August. My goal is March or April this year. But I at least wanted to bring these template figures together and share them with you, just kind of get a sense of if this is the direction you all thought this would go. And there are internal needs that we have in terms of understanding energy usage and expenditures and things like that. But certainly I'm also curious to hear your thoughts on this. So I don't know, I can pull some of this up here just in case anybody didn't have a chance to go through these. So it's kind of the base level energy graphics to help us understand at a city level, sort of these high level topics. Our annual energy usage, breaking it down by building level, we'll break it down also into different sectors. So buildings and operations and fleet vehicles, and then digging into renewable energy production and usage with what we're also purchasing from Madison Gas and Electric, and how we're doing towards our clean energy goals. So, this will be refined and get some further breakdown into smaller sections, but I felt like this was just a logical way to present this at a high level. My goal with this year's energy report, first of all, it's the first time I'm doing this internally, so it's going to be it'll probably get a little bit of sort of iterative development over the years. But I think in years past, what has been provided to us has been really interesting and useful for me, but not necessarily user-friendly if you're not used to looking at spreadsheets of energy data. And so I want to make it, I'm going to have my spreadsheets in the background, but the report itself, I think I'd like to have a little bit more straightforward and kind of generalist friendly. So that's sort of the goal, what's going on here. So it's going to be a little bit more of this type of graph. You're not likely to get like the color-coded spreadsheets that we've had in the past. I think those are very data heavy, which can be great, but I think a little intimidating as well.
Could you zoom in on your screen a little bit, just so?
Sure.
Perfect, thanks.
So yeah, here's the first couple high levels. This is breaking out kind of gas and electricity. So here's our buildings sector. In here is gas and electricity for operations. And there we're talking about things more like the water utility, street lights, as opposed to occupied buildings, and then gas and diesel for our fleet usage. So just kind of get a sense of where our energy is actually going as a city, and it's pretty close to 33% each. We're 41 in our buildings, just under 30 for operations, and then fleet right around 1/3.
Phil, I think that I thought that this presentation was great.
Okay.
I think it would be helpful for the pie chart if you had also showed at the previous year's pie chart.
Yes, and we do have that available. I think I can actually probably pull that up in here. Building level.
Phil,
So
under
here's-
electricity, do we know how much of that is solar versus
Oh, you know.
non-solar?
Sorry, let me change my share. I think I need to do the whole screen and not just that one application. That is something that I get into in a later graph, the
Okay.
solar versus, I'm pretty sure I included that.
You did.
If I didn't
Page
include that here, I
33,
should.
Rob.
I remember.
But yeah, so here's kind of, and some of this is
Okay.
the color coding got weird too, but here's 2021's buildings operation fleet. 2020, yeah, I gotta get into relabeling, but just kind of sort of doing the eyeball scan, it looks like operations decreased a little bit from 2020 to 21. Buildings went up from 2020 to 21. That is not a surprise. 2020 was probably the lowest occupancy as a percentage that we've ever had as a city, because everybody was working remotely for 2/3, 3/4 of the year. So that is something that absolutely will come out in the narrative. It's something you're going to see in these figures, is that there are certain areas where it looks like, oh gosh, what happened? Why are we using so much more energy? Well, it's because the city was operating at much closer to full capacity last year than the year before. So, you always have to take into account weather factors. Did we have an abnormally cold winter, and so we were purchasing more gas to keep buildings warm? That's, that weather related effect has to be considered. But now occupancy is, you just never, knock on wood, I guess, hopefully never going to have something like that again. So there are definitely some interesting peaks and valleys as a result of that. But then you do see this decrease overall. Now this is, I need to relabel this. This isn't total electricity use. This is total electricity purchases here. So our total electricity purchases decreased, substantially, the result of a combination of energy efficiency measures that we've taken, and also utilizing more of our own solar energy. The biggest drop off you see is 2017 to 18. We had the municipal solar rooftop project was September of 2017. So 18 was the first that we had full production from those panels. And one thing worth noting is that the O'Brien solar farm that we're purchasing from MG&E, I'm like 80% sure that those numbers, because we're still buying that from MG&E, we have a special tariff on this, but I'm like 90% sure that still does show up in this number. So this does include renewable energy that's both part of MG&E's and Alliance Grid, and then also what we're purchasing through Green Power Tomorrow and that O'Brien solar array.
It's 2019. Is that when the new fire station on Sain Road opened?
That would have been, I think that was September of 19. It was,
Okay.
might have been earlier than that. But yeah, that was in 2019, the new fire station. So that almost certainly was a contributor here.
Well, we're going in the right direction with electrical purchases, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Gas, the big thing here, and this is something I actually still want to check in with Kevin about. I haven't gotten a chance to over in our kind of buildings operation and maintenance. I'm not sure what happened with gas in this last year. I know 2020, both January, February, and November, December were quite a bit lower. I did already dig into that one a little bit. That would for whatever reason, 2020 here, I'll blow this up a little bit too. For whatever reason in 2020, December was a little bit lower than the years around it. November was substantially lower. And then something similar with February, that was quite a drop from the other years. Now we still had in 2021 an increase there. Some of this might have been getting things back into some semblance of normal flow with occupancy coming back. I don't know what else might have been going on there, but that's something to dig into and just see if we can identify why that happened. I know in the past we've had some issues with no, that was a KWH issue. In the past, I know we've had something with the library where there was a surprisingly high kilowatt hour usage because of the electricity needed to run the geothermal system at the library, but that wouldn't be gas. So that's something else going on here. But yeah, that'll just take a little bit of digging to see why it was so much higher in 21. And it's also possible that there's a calculation error, so I gotta recheck my tables as well. And then gasoline, something similar. Again, just gonna take a little bit of looking into and hopefully identify exactly what the cause is for this, because if we know what that is, it makes it a lot easier to address and try to get that going back the other direction. At least with electricity, you identify that there has been a decrease generally over the past 6 years. Gas and fuel for the vehicles, it's been a little bit more of a steady increase. And the likeliest explanation here is that the city grows, services expand, vehicle miles traveled increase, and if we're not turning over the fleet with far more efficient vehicles, either hybrid or electric, you're going to get an increase in fuel usage. This is certainly part of why in the Clean Energy Resolution of 2019, the goal was to decrease electricity. That's something that's a lot easier to do through building efficiency, LEDs, renewable energy. The goal for overall fossil fuel emissions was to decrease on a per capita basis. So as long as the increase here is lagging behind our increase in population, it's a win. We'd like it to go down anyway. But certainly, we have been decreasing our overall carbon dioxide equivalent emissions per capita over the past several years. So things are still going in a good direction, but yeah, something that we'll want to dig into on those two.
Bill,
Diesel went up a lot.
Yeah, it has. Do we have a dollar amount associated with fuel usage?
We do. That's one I haven't put together the chart yet, I don't believe. But
right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we do.
Sometimes that hits home when you're looking for hybrid or electric vehicles. Look, gas prices are going up and we keep spending more money, using more gas. So it's really hitting us harder.
And what would really help there, and this is one, we've actually just switched over with, I know our police fleet and a couple of other vehicles to a new reporting system. So I'm just kind of trying to get a feel for that, combining two different reporting systems. What would be best would be if we have usage and purchase data by department, because then when one department gets new efficient vehicles, we can actually see on a much more granular level. It's kind of like sub-metering for your fleet. You can figure out if your cost is going down there. Because if you take a couple of vehicles out of commission in one department, that also might decrease. That could, the larger a group you're looking at together, the more it can hide some of those effects. So I just need to make sure that we do have that kind of on a broken out by department for usage and costs.
Bill, anecdotally, do you feel like there's still that we're making up some of the pent up demand and services from 2020 as well? Like in 2021, do you feel like the demand was, higher than the 5 years previous kind of thing?
I would say that would be easier for Bill or other staff members to answer. I can't really say myself whether I feel like that's the case. I don't know, Bill, if you have a sense.
Yeah, we've I know in the diesel area that we've purchased a new vehicle to expand our services, coming on with the town of Madison, with the city, with Fish Hatchery Road as well. But on the gasoline side of things, I'm kind of scratching my head as I don't think we purchased new vehicles, or if we were just out there doing a whole lot of stuff in 21 to make up for 20. I'm not 100% sure on that, but.
Yeah, and this still isn't the friendliest graph. I'll come up with a different way to depict something like that. That's
Yeah, there's not a lot of variability there over the season, or
no,
the months, I should say.
no, there's not. And unfortunately, let me shrink this a little bit because I can't see my title bar up here. It's a little bit easier. Yeah, in 2021, it's not, there's not, September's the highest. There are 3 months, it looks like, in 2021 that were the highest we've seen in the last 7 years. So September and also March and April. So some of it may be just overall higher. It's not like there was 1 month, like we're seeing here with 2020, July was surprisingly high compared to the rest, but some different ways that we can look at this and really try to narrow down what's going on. So some other things to look at here. There's our diesel. Wow. Again, a lot higher, like Bill referenced. This one, so there's just a data aberration here. This has to do, I reached out to my contacts at MG&E and kind of dug through the data a little bit. There was a number of our meters, and I don't remember exactly if this might have been the water utility. I don't remember exactly, but a number of our meters, they actually started changing when they did the meter reading from like the 30th or 31st of the end of the month, switching it over to like the 4th, early on in the next month. And so there was this 1 month overlap where all of our April data was read on April 30th, but then a lot of our May data was read on maybe June the 3rd or 4th. So there's a little bit of that kind of monthly disconnect there. And there's just not, I might try to do something manual to try and clean that up, but it might also be more trouble than it's worth. And we'll just have 1 month that looks odd. And I'll just make sure any images that I share that show that monthly thing, that I add that a little bit of a footnote to cover that and make sure that we know in future years not to worry too much about what's going on there. But there is just a little bit of a data gap there for that reason.
Yeah, Phil, I think adding a footnote would be great, because I mean, you could spend a lot of time trying to massage it, but if somebody else looks at their real data, it's just going to raise more questions. So I think a footnote is good.
I assume for any of you who dug into these, that stood out immediately. We had some low months in the past, but that looks like something was off. And yeah, you're right.
But if you take a look at the $70,000 line, you can see a trend going down. Oh,
absolutely.
So,
so this is our energy costs by gas, electric, and the two fuel types. Generally, I think, and it's a little bit tough to parse this out, but it seems like generally the decreases in electricity. There is also a bit of a decrease overall in the gasoline costs. There's some of that fluctuation, barrel of oil price changes, and when you've got a recession, it's as those prices change, that's going to be reflected in our gasoline costs as well.
I think, Phil, when you do the executive summary, it's worthwhile to point out that we have at least one additional building. I'm not sure about if we have more wells, and maybe the number of vehicles that we have, both gasoline and diesel.
Yeah, and that's one I've never put together, that kind of a total quantity of city vehicles, but that would be good to reflect as well, because that is a city service that's going to reflect population.
So I think actually what I'm pointing out is, in spite of the fact that we have more buildings, the electrical use has gone down. So that, I think that's a feather in our cap.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a huge part of that is, and so not electric use, but electric purchases from the utility, and that's one I'll have to make sure that I'm really clear about that distinction in different charts. Are we talking about usage or purchases? Because fire station number 3. So what happened was the fire station came online, and I think it was about 8 months later, the solar array on the roof of the new fire station actually went online. So there's a period where the electricity usage for our fire department jumped. And then all of a sudden it started dropping again because we began to replace those purchases with electricity generated from that array. So that's significant here, is that, yeah, we did have that building come online, but our purchases decreased because we're still offsetting a lot of the electricity with solar energy.
Yep.
8 minutes left on this one.
Thanks, Josh. I'll jump ahead to a few more pages here. So here's it's nice to be able to take some of these numbers. It's sort of hard to compare side by side electricity and gas and diesel, but looking at CO2 equivalent emissions, electricity is still the largest one. Not a huge surprise. Our streetlights are a major electricity user. Our water utility, all the pumps and wells use a tremendous amount. I think they use 25% of the city's total energy, and that's almost exclusively electricity. So that's our largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, and more efficiency and more renewable electricity is only going to help there. On a building level energy use, the biggest thing that really sticks out. Sorry,
Can I
go ahead,
interrupt for
Diane.
just a second?
Sure.
If I remember way back when we did a greenhouse gas inventory, some of the wells were more efficient than others. Is that correct, Bill? Just because they're newer design or something? I guess what I'm getting at is, are we planning on replacing some of the more inefficient wells with newer equipment?
Some of we've got some wells using variable speed pumps, right? And that makes a pretty big difference in
correct.
energy usage. And is that only happening with newer wells? Is that something that we have already, or could still retrofit older wells with those variable speeds?
We've already retrofitted all of our wells with the variable speed. So we have to look somewhere else right now.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, and here are a couple of the biggest things that stand out to me when I'm looking at these building level KWH numbers is that the library, and again, this is purchases, not usage, got to change that title. But the library is quite a bit lower. Any of the buildings that have solar on top of them, you'll see starting in, between 2017 and 19, you see the numbers start to drop. Of course, again, a decrease in 2020 because of the pandemic. But we did start to see that decrease with here. Light blue is actually street lights. We started replacing city street lights, city-owned lights with LEDs. So there's a little bit of a decrease there. But the library, the fire stations in gray, you see this start to expand in 2018 and 19 as we add 2 newer fire stations, and then that solar begins to eat into those KWH purchases. City Hall, we got the solar installed on the roof, and those numbers start to go down. And then the same for public works. This is the really dark gray up here. It was a little smaller to begin with, so it doesn't stand out quite as much, but a decrease there as well for public works. So essentially the short version of the story here is a lot of the decrease in KWH purchases over the last decade is pretty directly attributable to our renewable energy installation.
No, I can't tell the difference between the park lights and the water utility. Which color is the park?
Yeah.
So the ordering in the legend here is the same as the order in the stack. So the top blue is water utility for both of these, and then park lights are this really, let me zoom in here. There's the park lights.
Okay, thanks.
They're hiding in there. Yep. And then sanitary utilities, it's in there.
Yeah, got it.
Sorry, I don't want to give anyone a motion sickness doing this too much. And it's a little bit different. We look at, I think I prefer the other. This one is really nice for seeing the proportion. You get the total usage, this stacked bar chart. But being able to see that decrease over the years is a lot easier with this view. So like being able to look at both of those. City Hall, you see that precipitous decline there. Same thing with the library. Fire stations, I think once we get a couple more years out, you're going to see that we peaked by adding the new buildings and then had to come down from there. Therm usage, so same charts, different fuel source, energy purchase. So not quite as much of a trend line here. You know, we've kind of already talked about those are bouncing around a little bit more and need to see exactly why, but here we've got City Hall. I think this is occupancy. You know, 2021 is much more within the normal bounds for 2015 to 19, and 20 was just an outlier. Seeing the same thing with community center was higher in 2020, but certainly at least for City Hall, I think that's a major part of the explanation there. And then we'll just see if there's anything we change in the community center that might have contributed to that rise over the last 3 years. Just a lot more pickleball, maybe. Then we get into renewable energy. So there's two different things that I was looking at in here. One is the renewable energy produced by the city's arrays. The other one is renewable as a total proportion of our usage. This first one is just looking at, this is our electricity source. So this is not comparing year to year. It's just 100% stacked bar chart. So each one of these lines is showing what percent of our total electricity use each of these fuel sources was by year. So we've got the orange is Madison Gas and Electric's just standard renewables grid mix. As they incorporate more renewable energy into their grid mix, a larger proportion of what we purchase from them is renewable. So, you know, we're at 14% roughly right now of our electricity purchases from them are renewable, simply because that's something that they're converting their stock over to. And that's going to keep increasing over time. They've got their 2015 carbon neutral resolution. So our goal is 2030, but you know, they're a little bit slower than that. Certainly by 2050, their whole customer base should be there with electricity. Net metered solar. So this is the solar panels on top of our buildings. The solar ground mounted arrays that we installed at the Public Works garage were included in here, but in 2019 and 2020, those two ground mounted arrays that we were, oh, sorry, that's this gold color here. We had some ground mounted arrays that we installed in a partnership with MG&E. And essentially that was going directly into MG&E's grid, but we were being credited with that electricity for a decade, and that's no longer a part of our mix. So you'll see in 2021, that gold band actually disappears. So those ground mounted panels are now just part of MG&E's electricity mix, even though they're on our site. We've got Green Power Tomorrow in here, a pretty small percentage. It's around 1% of our total electricity usage. And then of course, the big thing here that sticks out is we got the O'Brien Solar Farm start producing in 2021. Most exciting thing about that is that this is half a year of usage, and it already made up a little bit over 10% of our electricity for the year. Now, this is what we expected when we signed this agreement with MG&E, that buying close to 1 million kilowatt hours a year from this solar array is going to produce roughly 20% of our needed electricity. So that's going to be a huge contributor. When you add up that plus MG&E's grid, by the end of this year, we'll be getting 35 roughly percent of our electricity from renewables, simply because MG&E has been a really good partner on this.
Well, that's where we're at right now, at the end of 2021, it looks like.
So at the end of 21, so yeah, we're at about 35% at the end of 21, but around 10% of that is from our own city-owned solar. So it's an interesting thing to consider. There is still definitely places where Fitchburg can increase its own solar generation. But right now, coming into last year, it was kind of a 50-50. Half of our progress on renewables was coming from our production, half was coming from MG&E. This year, because of O'Brien, now this is something that certainly city staff pushed, and there was a lot of partnership with MG&E and with the O'Briens and with EDF Renewables to make this array happen. But MG&E is becoming a larger and larger contributor to our renewables. So we certainly are going to keep encouraging them to really move aggressively on that as well, because they can do projects at scale that we cannot do. And so it's much more cost effective for the utility to do this than for the individual customers too. Definitely still want to keep pursuing a balance of that. There's a lot of places for us to still invest further in it, but it's nice to see that we're getting a combination there.
What about green power tomorrow? Do you think that now that we've invested in the solar farms and solar arrays that we can stop doing green power tomorrow?
It is worth looking into. What I will need to do, and I'll see if I can get this into the report for this year. I want to look at not just the total figures here, but I'd like to look at cost per kilowatt hour, cost per therm, and look at that year by year. It would be really interesting to look at, we're paying 6.4 cents per kilowatt hour for the electricity we're getting from the O'Brien solar array. Right now, we've been averaging about, I want to say 6.8 or 7 cents per kilowatt hour for generally the electricity we're buying from MG&E. So O'Brien has actually saved us money already for the electricity that we've purchased through that agreement. So it's kind of been a winner all around. I'm not sure the cost per kilowatt hour from our solar arrays that are on our rooftops, but that's a little bit more difficult because a lot of it was upfront cost, and now the electricity that's being generated, it's all free, and we're just slowly paying it back through that replaced value of electricity. Green power tomorrow, I think it's 10 cents per kilowatt hour. I could be wrong about that, but I need to double check that one. It may be the case that money could be better spent, maybe putting it into the hybrid electric vehicle fund, something like that. It's something to look at, is kind of try to figure out how that compares to the rest of our electricity. And if we stopped doing green power tomorrow, do we have a direct substitute to put that money into that would still, it's kind of a question. Would that money just go into the general city budget? Would it be used to fund something else to cut emissions? And that would have to be part of the consideration as well.
Phil, it would be nice to have a y-axis on those graphs showing cost, energy cost savings in dollars.
It would be that. I'd have
You
to
had like a line going across showing the dollars on the y-axis.
I mean, your next one is cost breakdown, right, Phil?
This one is still electricity. So this is still 100% just stacked, or it's still a stacked bar chart, but it's based on the total quantity of energy, the total volume of energy that we're buying from MG&E, not the percent of 100. I don't know that I have a cost chart in here right now.
Yeah.
So that would be
a line on that chart.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
I think
we are 5 minutes over on this one.
Okay, I'll try to speed through this. Yeah, I definitely want to include in the final report a look at cost. Yeah, we'll make sure that that's in there. And then the other thing in here is just renewable energy as a portion of all the renewables that we're getting. Where is that coming from? So about 2/3 of our electricity last year was non-renewable in source, and then of the roughly 1/3 that was renewable, the biggest contributor right now, renewables grid mix, then O'Brien, and then our net metered solar. So just kind of trying to break that down a little bit more. PG4, or the green power tomorrow, was in there, and I just removed it for ease of viewing. And then these are just kind of looking at the year by year solar production from our municipal array. And here's in 2020 when the new firehouse went online, or its solar array. The firehouse itself was 2019. So this is kind of some of the background spreadsheets that are feeding into some of these calculations and graphs. And then I want to make sure that I'm covering this as well in the report, just looking at how close we are to our renewable energy goals. Great news here is target was 25% renewable electricity by 25, and we've passed it 4 years early. This year we're going to be up even higher. So we are doing well towards getting to 100. I think to get to 100 by 2030, because that's not in MG&E's goal, theirs is 2050. We're going to need another one or two O'Brien type of opportunities to really have a strong shot to get there in the next 9 years. But you know, there's a new one that MG&E is looking at. Kishkonong, I believe, is the name, down towards like Stoughton, Wisconsin.
Kashkanan.
Kashkonong, thank you, Diane. But yeah, with more projects like that, they, you know, in the last 6 years, they've put one up by the airport, they've put one in Middleton. So pretty confident that there'll be more opportunities in the near future for things like that. And then here is just looking at the fossil fuel energy usage per capita. And so we are about 12% below, because the Clean Energy Resolution was passed in 2019, it used 2018 as the benchmark. And the goal is to get to a 30% reduction in per capita fossil fuels by 2030. And we're right now at about 12%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing well. You know, once we hit this goal, we're not going to stop. We want to keep pushing, but it's nice to see that we're on track.
Great.
I believe that's, yeah. So that's everything I've got in here for now. And hopefully either in March, or if not, then by May, I'll have more of a finalized full report with a narrative write-up to share.
Okay. Well, that's great, Phil. These were great graphs. Thank you for preparing that and sharing it.
So I just, on the 25 by 25, that includes transportation fuel. So even
So,
though.
Yeah, so there are two different ways that we've looked at that. When we signed on to Governor Doyle's Energy Independent Communities Pledge, that 25 by 25 commitment was electricity and transportation fuels. And I'm keeping that in mind as well. I'm going to make sure that I'm looking into that and that we're trying to hit that by 25. Our 2019 Clean Energy Resolution kind of, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but I believe that resolution just specified electricity. So we've kind of committed to two different 25% goals. We've hit one of them. The other one, we've still got a little bit to go on that, but yeah, that's a good point to call that out.
Thanks. Really, really nice job on that, on the draft of that report.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, valuable, you know, for us, but, you know, especially for other people looking at it. I mean, we're kind of the data geeks, but like you know, the graphs are going to be very helpful for showing other people that may not be as geeky as we all are.
Yeah, and I definitely want to have it would be even more condensed, but I would love to have just like a sort of a dashboard, a one-page PDF kind of a thing that I could put up on the city's website every year and update that. Here's where we are right now. You know, maybe take these 30 graphs and turn them into 3. You know, do the EPA has a calculator that you can say, if you cut this many kilowatt hours, here's what that translates to in terms of acres of forest planted or cars taken off the road, things like that. I think being able to share that publicly would be really nice. I don't know we've ever done that very consistently.
I think it would be helpful to not only share this with council, especially when you have dollars attached, but to share that with taxpayers. To let them know that, you know, the city is making these investments and this is how much it's saving.
That would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I am definitely on board with making a sales pitch for the value of this stuff. You'll get no pushback from me there.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'll also be. I have one more thing I was just going to add. It'll be interesting to see where O'Brien comes after we do this year. I mean, all indications that should be up over 40%. You know, it's currently at 32%, but I'll also be interested if some of the amendments go through with some of this new funding that we have on some of the sustainability things. You know, the streetlights, you know, being one of them, you know, where, you know, obviously the first step, you know, to always go back to is not just necessarily add more renewables, but it is to go back and reduce the ones that we can reduce, and instead of just bringing down this, you know, high consumption rate, you know, just a refresher on the first step in the energy efficiency. When you put solar on your home, you want to, you know, get your home as energy efficient as you can. So changing out light bulbs and making, you know, our overall energy use lower will also help that percentage. So I'll be interested if some of those go through, if we can shift it down even further, maybe we're closer to 45 or 50%. So good job. Thanks.
Any more discussion? If not, we can move on to 4E. Bill and Phil could talk about the 2023-2027 capital improvement budget request ideas. We're behind schedule, but we can make it up on 5A, the annual event discussion. I don't think that's going to take 15 minutes. So.
Yep. And we could also, this is really just kind of an initial kind of spitballing opportunity. We can revisit this in March as well. Once we get into May, June timeframe, we're going to be starting to craft the 23 to 27 capital improvement project budget. If there are things that the RCC would like to see pursued over the next several years in that CIP budget, we've got this month's meeting and next month's meeting as an opportunity to really talk about that, share some ideas, and kind of put those on Bill's and my radar and on Gabriella's as well.
Some of that will depend on what gets accepted into the amendments and the how are we going to know what's going to be included in that? I'll call it the big spending plan, because the things that fall out, we may want to put in the CIP request.
Yeah.
Yeah, my understanding about the ARPA TID spending plan is that all the items that qualify for the capital improvement plan will likely be added into the document for this coming process, whether or not that's on the timeline of when this money would be spent or beyond that timeline. There is a couple of amendments I submitted that I don't really anticipate will actually be funded using this money because they're probably a longer time frame, and the ARPA money has to be used by 2024. TID money has a little bit less time constraints, but that being said, there's no reason not to make investments that save us money down the line. But yeah, we'll be putting stuff on the CIP that's on the finance director's radar in terms of making sure that happens. And I certainly would submit things that are in the spending plan to the CIP as an amendment personally. So
if we wanted to increase our solar, and I know Gabriella, you mentioned I think a solar park shelter. Are you talking about an existing park shelter and just adding solar on the top?
What I put in was kind of a upgrade of a current park shelter that's being rebuilt or a new park shelter that's forthcoming. So the hub phase 1 park, I think actually this shelter is not currently in the budget because it's over budget. So that's a possibility. Also I think the Stoner Prairie Park planning is well underway, so that could be a candidate for it. But the idea was to add funding so that I don't know what the cost differential for that is, but that we'd have that money in place for that. But yeah, that will be added to the CIP if it isn't added in as part of this process, behind the scenes before it gets released. I will do it as an amendment.
Would it be similar to the ones out at Capitol Springs Park where they have a solar shelter out there?
I was thinking it's like is it the Lussier Farm?
Lucier Heritage Center, yeah.
Yeah, that one. That one's it's beautiful. If you guys have never been, we should do a field trip.
Great. It's nice. Yeah, it is.
Field trip.
Yeah. Phil and I went to an event there last year, and I was blown away by how beautiful it was. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the beauty of it is like I would like get married under a tent under a like that. Like I think it's that beautiful. So.
Does it make sense to add solar to our wells?
Some of them it might.
So we did in the last CIP process. I don't know if you recall, we put funding in to add solar panels to the lift station in the Terravesa area.
Yeah.
And then I added stipulations that for future wells and pumps, we would incorporate solar, assuming that was feasible. But Phil and I had a lot of conversations, and Phil, I'd love you to weigh in on this, that the battery power is the tough part because wells and pumps are not constantly running. They run intermittently, which makes it a challenge. You probably have to store that power. Phil, go ahead if you want to add anything.
Yeah, that pretty well covers it. So the net metered solar, where the solar is essentially behind the meter. So anytime the solar is running, it's directly feeding into the buildings or that meter's electricity, and it just stops the meter from running. So you're not buying anything from the utility. But if the production ever exceeds the usage, then any excess gets sold back to the utility. Now, MG&E has a fairly favorable, for this type of agreement, a fairly favorable rate that they've worked out with customers, but it's still below the rate that we're buying electricity from the utility. So you might be buying electricity for 7 cents a kilowatt hour. Anytime you're using your solar directly, you're offsetting that 7 cents. That's the value of the solar you've produced. If you're not using it, you're just selling it back, you might be selling it back at 3 cents a kilowatt, 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's less valuable, which means it takes longer to pay back that initial investment. So for something like a well, for a lift station, where the usage is really intermittent, I think especially when you're talking about something like Terra Vesa, where it's heavily residential, a lot of people aren't in their homes during the middle of the day because they're out working or at school. That's when the sun's shining. So a lot of that electricity that's being generated is just directly being sold back, and it does decrease the value pretty substantially. So for something like that with intermittent usage, where you would get the biggest bang for your buck is solar plus storage. Now, the difficulty there is right now, battery storage is really expensive, especially at this scale. If you're talking about offsetting the usage for a well and not like a large corporate campus, battery storage is pretty cost prohibitive right now. So it's definitely something that I've talked with Tracy Foss as well about, and Gabrielle and I talked about a little bit. It would probably make more sense if we could get some ground mounted solar panels as opposed to rooftop, because ground mounted panels are costlier, but also more efficient in terms of their solar production. At this point, we don't really have any, our largest electricity consuming wells don't really have the ground space available to put ground mounted arrays. So you could look at putting them on the roofs. Now you're looking into how old are these roofs? Can they handle the weight of a solar array? So it's a number of kind of technical considerations that we'd look at. We've definitely talked about solar panels for some wells. We will keep exploring it. I definitely want to keep it under advisement. Tracy knows that this is a goal of mine, but that right now it's probably not in our short-term plans. But absolutely, as Gabriella referred to, for future wells, we want to try to make sure that we're doing everything we can to, if we're constructing a new well, try to make sure that there's space allowed for a ground-mounted array next to it.
Yeah, the lift station was the only one that seemed feasible for ground-mounted panels in the near term. The other wells and lifts, they were too complicated or wouldn't work. But the idea behind the other amendments, which are projects really farther out and may honestly never come to fruition depending on the development of the areas. The idea was to have it in the plan up front, have the additional funding available so that it could be incorporated into the plan from the outset. And that's what I like to keep an eye on too, if there's opportunities to make sure that that's included in the CIP, explicitly stated that solar power should be included, including battery arrays if the technology is at the point where that is feasible. I would like to see that in the document, no matter how far out, even if the project's 10 years out, I think it should be there. So that starts on early out in the planning.
With how big of a energy use the library and city hall are, have we looked at like suspended panels over the parking lot? I mean, there's a lot of land space there that's paved, right? And so there's other things we could be potentially entertaining.
We've had some really initial discussions about that. If we got to the point, once we get to the point where we're looking at needing to resurface those parking lots, I think that's absolutely something that I want to look into. We've got some good examples in the area, most notably Epic's campus, but there are other places around where there are those suspended kind of solar canopies over a parking lot. I think they're great. They're a little bit less efficient than a standard ground mounted array because those are taking advantage of a rotational axis, so it can actually track the movement of the sun. If you've got a solar array over vehicles, you want it to be a lot more stable, and you're going to have something that's fixed and really secure, and you know that there's not going to be movement that risks dropping anything on a car. So because you don't get that tracking, it's a little bit less efficient in its production. So then the cost we'd probably be looking into, if this became a possibility, my guess is it would be dependent on finding grant funding. But it's definitely something I want to consider. Yeah.
At one point we talked about, and I think this was before you joined the city, Phil, a trackable solar array by the drop-off site. Is that still being considered?
I haven't had any discussions about it. That's interesting.
Wouldn't that be a good site for it?
It could be. So there, I think the biggest difficulty, so anytime you're putting up, it's one thing if you were MG&E, you put up the array like at O'Brien and you can use some pretty high capacity transmission lines to connect that to your grid. When we're putting up solar panels, we're connecting them directly to a building for that net metering. The public works buildings have relatively lower usage compared to other buildings. And so the more solar we add at public works, the more likely we're exceeding our usage and selling it back to the utility. So that's something we'd have to look into. It's a surprisingly low figure, somewhere depending on the usage profile for the city's electricity, usually somewhere between 30 and 50%. Once you exceed that, generating 50% of the building's overall usage with electricity, there's some sweet spot in there for different buildings where once you exceed that, you're actually selling a majority of your production back to the utility and not using it yourself. And again, it depends on the building, it depends on occupancy and things like that. But that would be a consideration, as we want to make sure that we're not constantly clipping over that usage and not getting the full value out of it.
Thanks.
The short answer is that I haven't looked at it, and it would be something to consider, but that would be my primary concern.
Yeah.
With regard to the 2023 to 2027, the CIP budget request, was there things in the past CIP budget that we didn't get that we requested that we want to carry forward?
I don't think there's anything that hasn't passed. I think typically what happens is they get pushed farther in the plan, because it's a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
The first 5 years are what's really being planned for, and in the debt strategy is in the mind of the finance director, whereas the back 5 is really kind of just a wish list. So things sometimes get pushed back to the back 5 years, which are more theoretical. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. One of the things I would like to see for this coming budget is, the hybrid electric vehicle fund, when it was first put in the CIP, when I first put it in the CIP in 2020, it was meant to be funded through the tax levy. It was meant to be a contribution every year to it. That wasn't feasible. That wasn't included in the budget in the first year. So I came up with a strategy where we used gasoline savings to fund it for 1 year, which was great. And it worked really well because it was the pandemic and we weren't using as many vehicles. That strategy was carried over into this past CIP. So the idea was to only use gasoline savings, which probably isn't going to happen much until we actually have a fleet of hybrid electric vehicles that is saving us gasoline. So I'm worried that strategy is going to continue being part of the CIP, whereas I do think we should actually be contributing money to the fund every year, in addition to maybe going through those strategies like putting in gasoline savings. So if I don't see that in the coming budget, and Phil, I guess you should note that I hope that maybe we'll consider actually putting a contribution this year. And if it's not, I'll probably try to amend it to clarify that. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Would be a discussion I'd love to have.
Okay, any more discussion on the CIP budget request ideas?
I just have one, and I think we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, but I just want to make sure. We had a lot of stormwater projects that had to be pushed a little bit back because of budgeting. But with this, again, I'm calling it the big spending plan. Most of those are going to be included, or all of those are being included or proposed to be included. Is that correct, Bill?
So the plan, I can answer, Bill. The plan is stormwater projects are a big chunk of the ARPA funding, because stormwater projects qualify for ARPA funding, and that's more restrictive. So anything that qualifies for ARPA funding will probably be using that bucket of money wherever possible. And so the mayor's in a spending plan put stormwater projects, but we were vague as to which projects specifically, because we didn't want to get into an argument about which one is more than another, and things can shift in terms of staffing time. So a lot of that money will go to the stormwater projects, but I think to a certain extent, the staff is still going to decide what specific projects is going to be up first. And I think it's very much going to be tied to what's currently in the CIP and, the rating system that Claudia has put in. So I think that'll be very much tied to it. And Bill, please jump in as well.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think one thing I just wanted to point out was that we are going to be looking at other funding sources for these stormwater projects. So we want to we want to maximize the amount of grants that we're receiving. So we are going to be applying for other grants for some of those stormwater projects, so that maybe some of that ARPA money would get used towards something else if we know that we're going to get a grant, say from the senator's office or something like that.
Good,
Good,
Good.
yeah.
thank you.
That's a great point. That's something that's part of the strategy too, about one of the reasons we're being vague about the plan is we want the money to go as far as possible. So if it can be used as grant fund matching, that's a much more efficient use. You're doubling your money versus just spending it. So,
Yep.
So just to
Oh,
make
yeah.
sure, Gabrielle, just to make sure that I'm clear on that, the more kind of general buckets of funding that were in the mayor's initial plan, that kind of method is probably going to carry through to the final approved budget, that it isn't necessarily going to have specific dollars tied to each of these individual projects when it's voted on.
it's a good question. I don't think we really know how this is going to play out in the end, just because it's such a new process. But I think
Sure.
I think it'll become more clear after the CIP and budget cycle this year, and then probably over the next couple of years. Ultimately, it has to get into the CIP, and then it has to make it into the budget. We're going to see how it works this first year and how things. But ultimately, the spending plan, it's more money than we can spend. I think that's going to be. It's kind of more of a wish list, and there are going to be things that we want to spend money on that we won't end up having the funds available. So I know that's a very vague answer, but that's my understanding at this point.
Going to be hard to do the CIP this year.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's move on to item 5, the old business. Hopefully maybe the next couple of ones will go pretty quickly in terms of time so we can get caught up. Item 5A, the 2022 annual event. I've reached out to the South Central Invasive Plant Group. I think we've talked before previously of them hosting a field trip at one of our parks to talk about invasive species and what we can do to manage and control this invasive species within, particularly around homes and other people's properties, and what people can do in identifying what are invasive species. I still haven't heard back from them, but I do have a group call with them next week. So I'll get a little more update on who's going to be presenting that, and and set up a date for that. I think last time we also talked about reaching out to the tree folks within the city. Somebody was going to do that, and was there any update on that? I forgot who was going to reach out. Was that Josh or?
I have not done that yet, but I meet with Anna regularly, and
Okay.
Tree Advisory has another meeting coming up in March. So we
Okay.
could discuss it then.
Okay. So I'd like to get a date set up for that at our next meeting.
If you have a date sooner, we can touch base with Anna Healy in advance if you'd like to kind of get her read on it. But yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Gabrielle. All right. No other discussion on that. Item 5B, the RCC presentation to a committee of the whole.
Could we back up a second,
Sure.
Ron? Based on the minutes, Kim was going to reach out to Anna and maybe the parks staff. So maybe that was something that Kim did.
No, sorry, I forgot.
Okay.
Oh, Gabrielle,
All right.
you're off the hook.
Well, I will bring it up at Tree Advisory, our next meeting in March, and I actually will bring it up to Alder Radafrada, because I know they've been having some discussions about invasive species in parks recently. So it seems like a timely. Maybe she can put it on their radar as well. Keep up to date. But yeah, the more the merrier. Can't hurt
Yeah.
to put more reminders out there.
Yes, yeah, okay.
And then, yeah, the event is, we did agree that we thought that May was the best time to have it. So
Right.
as a heads up, our next meeting will be in March, and we don't have a meeting in April. So we really have the next meeting to kind of plan it out. So
Right.
we're going to probably need to have a little bit of email traffic going. And then just to remind you, Ron, when you think you are starting to pull something together in terms of a framework and you want community outreach subcommittee, that's when Kim and I can work with Sharon Hanrahan and maybe, a couple others to just start to coordinate and plan for the event. So start to get a marketing plan together, all of those types of things. So those
Okay.
start to happen between this meeting and the next meeting. because if we get to the March meeting and then we have all these things going on in April, we're going to be a little bit more pressed. So it would be nice to get a little bit of a start on some of those things, starting to get that framework ironed out, and us to start to get in the mix, the community outreach subcommittee to, help, launch and market and, make it a good quality event that we've been used to having.
Okay.
Something,
Chris,
something.
Chris,
to
can you
keep-
remind me, did we select a date or did we just say it was in May?
It was just in May.
So
I
I
have to
think,
coordinate with the SCIP people to find out what date would be good with them.
Okay.
So,
Something
Were
to
we-
keep in mind.
go
We
ahead.
won't have space for an article in the Star in April, so you may
I was
want
gonna
to
write something in March.
talk about this and mention that we're going to be doing this in May. Is that the plan? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
My notes said we kind of tentatively landed on May 19th, which is a Thursday
May
for the
19th.
event. That was what was strongly discussed. I don't think we like had a final, but we talked about Thursday night, May 19th.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I don't see it in minutes.
That would be great because it would be after the May issue of the Star comes out and we could include a reminder in there. So
Mhm.
that, I think maybe that went into that selection.
Okay. So
Yeah.
May 19th is a tentative date. Okay, I gotta remember that for my meeting next week.
Yeah. Can we get that reflected in the minutes, please, Phil? That we think we,
I'll make sure it's in there.
what's that?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. All right.
Okay,
We made up most of our time. We're only 3 minutes over now.
okay. So item 5B, the RCC presentation committee of a whole. I got an email day before yesterday, or no, I think Friday, from Randy Alder Udall regarding moving the date, our presentation date to May. So he didn't give me a date, and I sent an email to him asking what day that would be on. But he said, in lieu of the recent ARPA funding process that requires a lot of the council's time, that they have to move the committee of the whole presentation to May. So that gives a little more time to put some stuff together. Hopefully we can get some more additional information from Phil, update from you on the energy usage and things like that could be included in that presentation.
Committee of the whole is typically the fourth Wednesday of the month, is after the second council meeting of the month. So I
Okay.
believe that's
The 25th,
That would be May 25th.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that sounds right. It can change, but that's typically the date that we set.
Okay.
And I was going to work more on the slides, but knowing that this was getting delayed and then I picked up the article task for this month, I have put it off, but I can chip away at it because I think that you made some adjustments to some of the outline for our slides after the last meeting, if I remember correctly.
I think
Yeah.
the one that's in the packet was the updated version. I sent that
Okay.
out shortly after. So I think that's updated. However, for those of you who may have read the last issue of the Star, I think that when we do this part of the presentation, I think it's important that we emphasize that the sustainability plan is not, we're not intending to mandate anything. This is just applying to municipal operations immediately, and then as we go out to the community. But the article that was in the Star kind of, I thought, gave the impression that these kinds of things, that when this is done at the municipal or government level, that it includes mandates. And we need to correct that perception to the council and also in public.
Yeah.
So
Unfortunately, mandates
somewhere we can slip that in. We've got, Chris, we have so much time, and I want to thank you again for stepping up and writing that article for the Star. But since our presentation isn't until May, we have plenty of time to work on the slides.
Yeah, I mean, May will come up quicker than we think, but
Yeah.
I know how fast April goes. So it would be nice to chip away at it a little bit before we get into April and May.
Assuming that the ARPA plan, no one removes the sustainability plan from the ARPA plan, the plan is to put more money towards the sustainability plan using that bucket of money. So
Right.
I don't know there wasn't line items for every single thing in the mayor's budget. So I don't know how much was intended for that additional funding. But Phil, maybe that's something you can find out what the intention was, because I would imagine that I don't even know if the plan is to put this out to RFP before that May meeting. I mean, I think that potentially could be a great thing. I just don't know what the plan is, and I don't know actually how much money we have to work with.
My goal is to put the RFP out before May. I didn't directly ask, but the sense I got from chatting with Misty was that there weren't specific line items envisioned by the mayor when he put this together, so she couldn't really say. And this was in the context of that same bucket of sustainability funding, and the mayor's plan also mentioned matching grant funds. So that was kind of a conversation I was having about some grants I applied for last month, and there's not right now a specific number targeted to any of those.
My hope is it's at least another 25,000, because the budget was 25,000. They referred to that as phase 1, and that this would be phase 2 funding. So I think that sometimes phases of funding are typically 50-50, but I could be wrong. I'm hoping it's at least 50,000.
If we don't get a specific number, it's certainly something we can work with when we put an RFP out there. We say we have a minimum of $25,000 for this plan. In your proposal, tell us what can you give us for 25,000, and then if we have more funding beyond that available, what else can you provide, and what would that cost to be? And that might help us to put together a really good proposal to council or to the mayor on how much extra we think is needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some benefits to being vague, is that maybe we could actually determine based on the RFP what we could ask for.
Back to this outline. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to add to it, or I think
Can you put, Bill or Phil, can you pull that up on your screen?
I think we need to clarify the community part. I think that's what the community part might envision, and maybe Phil, you can not necessarily during the meeting today, but maybe you can provide some more detail about the community aspect.
This section I've got highlighted here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I can make sure to that I'm ready to give some clarification to that if needed.
Well, I think that would be a great place to emphasize or somehow bring out, we're not mandating that the community does anything.
Right. And that I think a mandate would be inconsistent with most anything else the city's done to this point. The recycling and shred events, the waterway cleanups, the bring your own bag events, even the idling reduction campaign. There is a policy for city staff, but it really is their signs kind of requesting behavior changes from citizens, but nothing has been forced on anyone. So I hope that our record speaks for us that as a city, we don't have a habit of doing those kinds of mandates, but yeah, we can definitely make sure we're clear on that. And that even within the clean energy resolution, I think the language we used was that the city would I don't remember the specific language, but essentially use education and outreach to encourage the community to provide resources and opportunities for the community to work with the city on reducing emissions, that there wasn't going to be any kind of forcing changes.
Two areas that I was kind of curious on, one of which is maybe calling out like a collaboration with neighboring communities. So like if the village of Oregon or the city of Verona or something like that is looking to do something similar, which I guess I would hope a lot of our local municipalities are, that maybe looking at opportunities for collaborative elements like that. And then the only other one I was curious about is if the consultant would be encouraged to find analogs around the country, similar sized communities who maybe have implemented something already or have a plan, and try and pull, some of the creative ideas from there, or see how other communities are looking to tackle similar efforts?
Yeah, I think probably that's not as likely something we'd get from a consultant working with us on the plan. That's more kind of an action or strategy to achieve some of the outcomes laid out in the plan.
Okay.
It's definitely something that would be a responsibility of my role once we've got a little bit more clear targets of what we want to have happen. And that's something that we're doing with pushing for a bike share system right now, as I've looked at other systems in, from Madison to Michigan to South Carolina, and talked with city representatives about how it works there and try to find the best analogy to work for us. We do have, and this would be something called out by the plan, that we've got a couple of local kind of countywide and statewide partnerships that we're a part of. And it, again, would be on city staff to really make sure that we're making use of those resources. But we've got the Green Tier Legacies community that the state DNR oversees. And then more locally than that, a number of Dane County sustainability officials have a sustainability leaders collaborative that we meet on a monthly basis to just talk about essentially a peer group, since for the most part, we are departments of one, trying to pursue these things with our cities. We've got a lot of buy-in from local staff, but our particular roles are pretty unique. And so that's a really good sharing opportunity. But yeah, agree entirely that when resources are limited, staff is limited. That kind of looking for those examples and collaborations are really valuable. And it's actually, I've already spoke, I think I mentioned this in January, I already spoke with the economic development staffer for the town of McFarland, because they just went through their sustainability plan process a couple years ago. Got a lot of really good insight from Andrew on how that process was for them that I think will inform our RFP process.
Okay, any other discussion on this topic? Thanks, Phil, for sharing that screen. Okay, we can move on to item 5C, the Fitchburg Star articles.
Yeah, huge thanks again to Chris for stepping in last month. Clearly, personally, really appreciate that.
No problem.
So I'm up next on the invasive species. So I'll be done for the year on that. So I'll let somebody else do some articles. So we got a lot of dates to fill up here. So start identifying some potential dates you might be interested in topics.
I'm happy to take May and either move the piece advocating for native plantings, or tweak the topic to something more time relevant if people feel like that's a little too late season.
Isn't the native plant sale at the Arboretum in early May?
It is. I think the only disadvantage that might be, by the time that this published, you have to put your orders in more than a month in advance. So, because I think they're trying to get those out to Agricol and get them in place. But you're talking about the one where you could actually be buying in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as that
May
goes
14th.
forward this year, which I guess I would expect it would. That's a good call out.
When is the date?
It's May 14. I think the Fitchburg Star would come out on like the 12th or 13th. Let's see what, it would come out on the 13th. So it'd just be the day before that sale. That's a little tight, but technically would be released in time.
Well, Josh, even though you might miss the Arboretum, or maybe not miss it, I think it's still worthwhile to encourage people to plant native plants rather than non-native. So if you'd like to do that for me, I was just going to explain the reason that this was included is maybe more than a couple of years ago. It was, we planned at the beginning of the year, people picked a month that they were going to write, and they did that based on their vacation schedules or work schedules or whatever. And that way we don't, as a commission, don't have to keep revisiting this every quarter or even every month, which is the case now. If people want to pick a month that works for them, we'll just fill this in. We still have, we've committed to nine articles. And I've already taken out 2 months because that's usually when the Star is pretty heavy with election ads, and there's not a lot of space for our article. So we have one more month that we can take something out. But if there's a month that somebody would like to pick and write an article that works with their schedule, that would be terrific. And if we can get these signed up now, or with now or next month for the rest of the year, that takes off a lot of time from our meetings and takes off some pressure. And you can write the articles whenever you want. Josh, you might pick May, but you could actually start writing it in February and have it done. It's nice to have something in the hopper just in case we have something like came up in February. So you can think about it. You can step forward now. You don't even have to have a topic if you just want to pick a month. But I think it would be helpful if people did pick a month, and if you want to email me and let me know this is the month that you'd like, or pick more than 1 month, that would be great.
Diane, I'd like to at least try to get a couple more months added to that schedule right now. So is April election month?
Yeah, yes,
So we wouldn't have an article in April then?
no.
Okay,
So-
so
Well, actually, the election would be before the Star comes out for April, so maybe it would be,
I was just gonna say, I mean, I could also write for April if we feel like the election's gonna be in advance and we're not actually gonna be pushed out by ads.
yeah,
Ron,
when
you
is
might
the-
get pushed out. You might get pushed out by ads. Yours
I
might
was
get
just gonna
bounced.
say,
yeah.
this
So-
coming version,
Yeah, but let's-
Also, if it's a helpful selling point, Josh, April is when the orders have to be in. May is technically the plant sale. June is National Pollinator Month. So there are a number of different months when an article on native plantings you can find a good selling point there.
So Diane, do you think we would have any opportunities in May to present an article? I mean, April?
we might. I can check. When I originally corresponded with the editor at the Star, I told him that we wouldn't do April or October because of the election, or whatever the month is. Yeah, October, because of the election. And I realized that he's new in this position, but he didn't say, well, no, April would be fine. But I think I need to check back with him. It might be March. We need to push things back a month. But let's go ahead and get these scheduled. And if we push it back a month, it shouldn't affect it.
Okay, because I'm set to put one in March, but I can move back to April, so.
Right. I mean, that for you, if we're not doing our program until May, that would work either way.
Okay. So I could do April, then Josh, you could do May.
I could do
I'm
June.
wondering,
What's that? Kim?
Oh, well, depending on what Josh picks, I could do May or June. I can't do April.
Ron, I'm wondering if you and I would want to switch, because then we could, if I did April, we could get in before Plant Dane, and we could be encouraging people to get in orders via that option too.
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, then I could do May, because
No,
May would be before the field trip.
it would be only a couple days before.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I think between the two of you, you should take March and April, assuming we can get an April in. And if we can't get an April in, maybe Josh, you can push to do a May one, but I'll check on that. So why don't we, for now, let's plan on Ron for March and Josh for April. And if I find out that we can do an Josh for May, and if I can find out we can do an April article, you guys can flip around and I'll be in contact.
Okay.
But if the writing spirit moves you, start writing now.
Yeah. And so Kim, you can do June then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do a couple also. I'd be really, I'd enjoy writing an article or two. So you can kind of put me in wherever, but.
So we put you in for July?
Does 1 month work better for you than another?
Not necessarily. honestly, you can kind of put me in wherever. I'm pretty flexible on timing. Although the one thing I was thinking about, and maybe you guys can help me with this, but I hadn't seen anything about composting. That was something I thought could be useful. I had seen that waste reduction was done, I think, late last year, and so that just timing wise would make more sense to do, you know, summer, early summer, but it's probably something that could go at a few different points in the season and still be appropriate.
I think that would be an excellent topic. We have not touched on that much for recently. And I don't know if you noticed or if you read in the paper that California is requiring individuals and businesses to compost. I'm not suggesting that Fitchburg require people, and that would never go over anyway, but I think that would be a great topic.
I would love for us to pilot a collection though, if we could ever have that discussion.
Well, I was just going to jump in and say that's the one thing I forgot to mention with the CAP. I was playing around with the idea of doing a composting through the ARPA TID funding, but it just didn't feel like the right, because that's an ongoing program. It's not really the right use of the funds.
Yeah.
But I would be interested in putting that in the CIP potentially this year, if we can get a better sense of what that looks like, even if it's a little farther out, but just so that's in the documentation that being thought of. But I don't really know who. I have to do a lot of research. But maybe this is perfect timing then. We could do an article. I might be putting in a CIP amendment to that end, and could be generate a new conversation.
Are you talking about developing a Fitchburg compost site, or I missed something?
Like organic food composting, either a pickup service or a drop-off site. I think some cities have that, or sometimes it's a paid service. Sometimes I don't know. I think there's a lot of different models, which is what I have to do a lot of research on. I think sometimes it's you opt in and you pay specifically for pickup of organic from your home. Sometimes, and it's not just like an automatic pickup, but
there isn't.
Trying to look.
The reason
So-
the city had a composting pilot several years ago and stopped because there wasn't a local place to take the stuff that was picked up. It was being trucked to Oshkosh, which from an environmental standpoint doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. And Madison hasn't successfully, although I thought that Dane County was developing a compost site. Do you know about that, Chris?
Yeah, so I mean, Diane's right. We did do the pilot in 2012. So I was one of the participating households in Swan Creek. And then we did it in one other neighborhood. And so for like a year or more, I think we ran it for 12 to 18 months. And, you know, we kind of combined, I believe our compost was City of Madison, and then that was hauled. I think initially it was going to Columbia County, and they had a giant composting container that it was put in initially. Then over time, you know, then it started to go to Oshkosh. But, you know, the City of Madison has done pretty extensive, you know, research on that. And, you know, always the big challenge is the contamination levels and getting people to comply with it and trying to get it simplified. And then trying to figure out like what, you know, the problem with Madison right now, and not necessarily forever, is that we don't have the infrastructure to, you know, kind of pull those contaminants out as of yet. You know, I think there's some smaller pilots that are, you know, being tried out, you know, where we're really trying to simplify it and just say, you know, fruits and vegetables only. And then I think some of that's going out to like the Gunderson composter. But, you know, what Dane County wants to eventually do is they want to have, you know, the infrastructure in place as part of their waste facility, particularly the newer one that will be developed, you know, in the coming years. And so as part of that, you know, I think that the composting, you know, will pick up steam again. You know, in the meantime, there are a lot of, you know, good curbside composting options that have come up, you know, so in addition to doing it at your home, there are some local commercial folks that are going around and picking it up and then composting it on their own lands. And so there's this private composting that's going on. And that was going to be one of the things that we featured at our you know, trying to reduce food waste forum that we were going to have in 2020, April of 2020. So we all know what happened to that one. It didn't happen, you know, and we would love to get back and have that topic and have that conversation in Fitchburg when we're able to. But there has been some good work on this, and I think that, food waste is an area that we wanted to dial into a little bit more. And, maybe it will be, make sense to do another pilot. But we also, like Diane was saying, we need to have that infrastructure closer by to make financial sense.
May I suggest that we potentially think about this as a future topic, like an explicit agenda item for a future meeting? There actually is a household organics collection report for the city of Fitchburg that was produced in 2011, which I'm sure informed the pilot program. But it'd be interesting to dig back into the history on the website and I don't know if that, I don't know who, I'm obviously Chris, it's great to have you, and maybe even if we had another one of the pilot families that could comment on it, but figure out what data we should take a look at and maybe have a conversation. Because when I talk about putting in the CIP, it's something that could go in the back 5 years where it's just in this, it's basically in the thought process of the city, but it's not actually in the near term. And I do think that putting good ideas that we are interested in pursuing in the back 5 years of the CIP is a great way to just get it in city documentation. That's kind of my personal view.
I do think putting it on the back end of the 5 years is a good idea, because we are going to be building into some type of infrastructure coming into the Madison area. And we're going to need, Dane County to need that data in order to inform them on, how to do this. And so, I think there's some development that could happen over the next few years, certainly with conversations that I could have with Dane County as they're trying to figure out that infrastructure. And they may be doing some pilots, on their existing landfill, right? So I think there's opportunities. We just have to have the conversations. And I do think it is a wise thing to have in it. And I agree with you that, maybe this is a topic, it is a topic that we were passionate about and wanting to do that event on. We never did. So it is something that, would like to bring back on the table. And maybe we could have just a conversation as a group about it and just talk about what are some things we can do in Fitchburg to promote it a little bit more.
If we decide to spend some time at a meeting discussing that, I would encourage us to include Rick Eilertson in that discussion. He was actually with the city when we did the pilot program, and based on what I know about his memory, he probably remembers every detail about the pilot program, the problems and the successes and the number of households. So I would just include Rick Eilertson in that conversation.
Okay.
We are running about 9 minutes over. So Ron, do you have enough to fill the coming months for star articles at this point?
So just to refresh, we have, I've got March, you've got April, Kim's got May.
Well, we'll lose a month in there somewhere.
I've got notes on it, Ron. We've got, I think we have enough. I was going to take July, but I'm going to take whatever month it works out that we need an article. But
Okay.
I'll update this and send it around, and you all can take a look at it.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Great, that sounds good. Okay. Okay, let's.
And thank you,
move on.
everyone.
Yeah. Chris and Kim, you going to give an update on agenda item all business 5D, the Aldo Leopold MMS ST recycling initiative?
Yeah, there hasn't been really too much action happening in the schools. Without Omicron, it was pretty much locked down in the month of January. So there really hasn't been too much action there. There is a new volunteer protocol that they're putting into place. And so there's some training, and, I think a few of us may be signing up for that so that when the opportunities do present themselves to get back into Leopold, we will get back into it. There is, kind of gaining momentum, at other schools across the district. So there are, there's getting to be more interest. And there was one school in particular where the principal has been very passionately speaking with the superintendent of the Madison schools and also the Madison School Board, and gaining some momentum at the top end level. We've been doing a lot of grassroots but also working kind of with leadership kind of in the custodial and food and nutrition department. So we're going to continue to do that effort, continue to do stuff at the grassroots, but there may be a little bit more movement at the district level, which I think is exciting to our overall goal is to kind of do what we've done in Leopold, but to have that infrastructure in place when students, potentially are returning to cafeterias at the beginning of next school year. So there's quite a bit that's going to happen in the next few months that could be pretty exciting, that the whole program that we have at Leopold could be duplicated to all 33 elementary schools in the district by next fall. I'm not sure exactly how that's all going to happen, but it's being talked about. That idea is being floated at this point.
Great, thank you. Okay, item 6 on the agenda, council update, Gabriella.
Yes, thank you. We passed in the January meeting, shortly after our last meeting, we passed and approving the updated funding agreement for USGS for the Swan Creek monitoring station. Not quite sure why it didn't come to RCC, but it kind of just a standard update to the agreement that we'll probably do every year. And then we still have those MOUs with the MOU with Town of Dunn to continue contributing to the project. But I don't think that needs to be renewed every year. That's just an ongoing thing.
Yeah, and Lake Wabisa Conservation Association is also writing a check for like $27.50
Nice.
to the city for the additional sampling.
Yeah, and I'd love to talk later in the year because I have some ideas about maybe talking about increasing the budget for it in future years, but we can have that conversation later. And then I did mention last time about the Edgewood project, that sports complex on the corner of Lacey and Seminole Road. That went before the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission in January, and then they voted on it on February 10th, and I believe it passed. Is that correct, Bill? Do you know?
Yes, the policy board recommended approval of it, and we do have the approved documents now.
Okay, all right. So that was my understanding, was that they would it was likely to pass, and so that move forward. So just wanted to update you on that. Tree advisory, just a couple of things. We were recently again awarded the designation Tree City USA. We've had it for the last couple of decades, and we've been just recently discussed about potentially pursuing Tree City of the World, of which there are 2 things that we are missing. One of which is a tree protection ordinance, which Tree Advisory has been working on for a little over a year, and we do hope to pass this year. And then the other missing element is an updated tree inventory. We actually do not have a full inventory for the city of Fitchburg for our tree canopy. And I've included that as an amendment for the ARPA TID spending. So hopefully we might potentially be qualified for Tree City of the World in the near future. Also recently had a Transportation Transit Committee meeting. We had a long conversation about Madison Metro bus service because they are doing their network redesign study right now, and they have a draft map released. And it is significantly different in some ways from the previous Madison Metro map. So if you're interested in bus service in any way, shape, or form, I highly recommend you just search Madison, Wisconsin, Madison Metro bus service transit network redesign. Any combination of those in Google should pop you up to the website, and you can look at the draft map. If you have a tough time finding it, just let me know. And one of the some of the key things is simplifying the routes a little bit so that they can come more frequently. Fitch Hatchery Road is actually set to have up to 15-minute interval bus service for parts of the day during high peak times. So it's meant to make the system more ridership friendly, which means that the bus comes more often so that you can rely on it more, versus a coverage option, which means that it would travel to more locations. So the routes in some ways are kind of paring down to more main drags and coming more often. And they're also almost entirely getting rid of transfer points. So things will be more direct. So it's significant. And we've been had a long conversation about how we properly advertise that, public meetings and getting the information out, but thought you all should be interested that's a big thing on the horizon. Are there questions?
No, I was agreeing.
Yeah, it's important because it really can affect some people's lives. People that I'm sure there will people that will be negatively affected by it. I think overall it's a positive move for the system, but certainly there are people that the new network will be challenging for them. So it's something we have to keep in mind with any sort of changes like that. But that will be coming before the council sometime later this year for the Fitchburg specific portion of the map. And then we also talked about an update on the transit plan, which has not been updated since 2010. So Andrew McFadden, our transportation engineer, is looking at doing a refresh and having a discussion about that in in TTC. We had a conversation, and I specifically asked that we look at some emphasis towards climate change, reducing emissions, and sustainability in the transportation system, which hasn't really been back in 2010. That really wasn't mentioned at all in the plan. So I'll be advocating for including that as part of the planning, and hopefully we can that update can also be helpful integrated into the sustainability plan as well. And then last item is because we just talked about Fitchburg Star, the Fitchburg Star, it reminded me that we've been notified that the Fitchburg Star has reduced its distribution. There's about 450 addresses that have been removed from the distribution list. My understanding is that the Fitchburg Star is having some difficulty financially, and we're trying to work on solutions for that and find out what the deal is, and if we can find out where those gaps are and how we can work on it. But right now, things are a little bit up in the air, and Chad Brooklyn, the administrator, is planning to get more information out to the council in the near future. So, and happy to take any questions.
Diane, you're on mute. No.
Gabriella, you don't know where those 450 locations are?
My understanding is that they will not release the list of addresses to us, but we were told that the 53575 zip code was dropped completely from the distribution list.
And do you know where that is?
I don't. I think it's closer to Oregon. I'm not 100% certain.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, catching up on our time here, we can move to agenda item number 7, staff and commissioner updates, solid waste bill, stormwater and sustainability. Bill.
Yeah, not much to report on the solid waste and end of things, but stormwater wise, we're putting together our annual report for the DNR. You'll be seeing that in March for approval or comments. So that's coming out. We are advertising for a stormwater engineer full-time, still open until filled. We do have some applications that we're reviewing, so maybe we might be selecting from that group, or it might still be open in a month. We'll have to wait and see.
Is there a closing date on that, Bill?
It's open until filled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You had mentioned earlier in the meeting about some statistics on with Dane County. I had Dakota put together a spreadsheet for me, and I haven't reviewed it, but it looks pretty good. I'll share it with you now, just to give you an idea of some of the things that we're looking at here. So I can zoom in a little bit here. Just the number of active sites that we have from year to year, ranging anywhere from 45 to over 60. The number of inspections that we have, the amount of time that Dane County uses reviewing permits is in blue versus going out and doing inspections. And then the annual amount, it looks like you made a table or a chart for that too, as to how much we're expending. You mentioned just kind of.
Bill, it looks like slightly more than half get inspected. Is that correct? And the other half are just based on self-reporting? Am I reading that correctly?
No, this was the total number of inspections that we're doing out there. So they've had, 1,100 contacts in 2020 that they had for those sites. Just some of the totals on the side, it's like the average number of active sites that we would have, the plan reviews that they do, the notices of contacts. So of the 948 roughly inspections that are performed every year, we have to follow up about 275 times a year with those contractors to get them in compliance. Sometimes we do issue a notice of non-compliance if there's a site that they have not been in compliance for a number of times. It's a repeat offender. So we issue a notice of non-compliance, which they would have roughly 48 hours to correct the compliance. And if they don't, it goes into enforcement. So maybe 5% of the sites that we have to go in have a contact with. They are issued a notice of non-compliance. Roughly a third of those actually do go to enforcement where citations are written.
Bill, is there a fine associated with that citation?
There is. I can't tell you what it is. I think it's $135 plus court costs. So
day?
it could be per day, but usually it's just a one-time that they get in
much.
compliance.
Yeah.
And then does that go to the county or does that go to the city?
Yeah.
It goes to the city. It's a city ordinance. So
Okay.
the city is the one writing the citation under our court system.
Okay.
So I'm a little confused. It said like over 2,000 active sites, but 1,100 something inspections. So there are sites that are not getting inspected?
No, they're all being inspected. I'm not sure the number of active sites.
Yeah, it says 2,021 active sites and 1,188 inspections. And I'm missing something
Dane
there?
County?
That's the year.
Oh,
the year 2020.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. Yeah, this is the first I was just kind of clicking on this to see what he had put together, and so I'm reviewing it too for the first time. Yeah, that's the year that they were inspected.
I guess I need some caffeine.
No, totally understandable, because when you look to the chart to the right, then
Yeah.
it does have the number of inspections that were, so.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. So, yeah, stormwater wise, we've got our annual report coming out that is going to be submitted to the DNR. We're submitting, our capital improvements are kicking off. So I'm looking back at some of the projects that maybe got, put in the back burner that, we can bring forward at the next meeting, just to see if there's something that we want to put forward. Again, I think the big one that's been always kicked down the road was the sustainability plan. And it's, in the budget, and we're actually working on it this year. So that was one of the big ones that just kind of either got deleted from previous plans or got discussed and then deleted. So.
Yay.
I have a question, Bill.
Yes.
Once we are fully staffed in stormwater again, will Claudia continue to staff this meeting, or would you plan to put whoever the new full-time engineer is on the staffing this committee?
That would be the full-time engineer.
Okay. I will miss Claudia, but excited to see the new person.
Well, I'm sure she'll be popping in from time to time with, things that she's been involved with, but it won't be as often.
Awesome.
Thanks, Bill.
Sure.
Bill? And then we covered-
Pretty quick on sustainability. January was pretty heavily on just grants. I submitted one with the state DOT for a bike share grant that we're hoping to get awarded for funding in 23 or 24. The other was with the Public Service Commission's Office of Energy Innovation, and that grant would, if we are awarded it, help us to replace several hundred streetlights with LEDs. I did mention in the annual report agenda item that we have already done a lot of LED streetlight replacements. That's mostly streetlights that are both owned and maintained by the city. So those ones are metered for payments to the utility. So when we replace them with LEDs, the energy savings we realize in our energy bills. There are also a number of streetlights that we have in Fitchburg that either are fully owned and operated by MG&E or owned by the city and operated by the utility. And those ones, we just pay a flat fee. They're not actually metered, so we don't realize the energy savings in our energy bills from those. So those are the ones that we're looking to get replaced with this grant, is the streetlights that we own but MG&E operates. I should be finding out about that, I think sometime early summer, May or June. But I'll let you know when I find out more about that. The one other big announcement update is that the Green Tier Legacy Communities Report is coming due. Looking to finish both that and our annual energy report from last year. So it's January was the month of grants, February and March are the months of annual reporting. And I'm hoping by the March meeting, I'll at least have a draft report from Green Tier Legacy Communities to share with you. I know I've tried to do that in the past, to share the GTLC report. I think I missed it last year, so I want to make sure I have that in front of the RCC this year, either in March or in May.
Last year, Phil, I think you didn't share it with us because they were in the process of changing the grading.
We are still in the process of that. We were hoping that we would have the new reporting template ready to go by last year for 2020's report. That's what I was counting on, and it just kind of dragged out with the work group through the summer. I actually didn't end up finishing Fitchburg's GTLC report for 2020 until last September or October, quite a bit later than normal. But I was under the impression that I should be waiting for that new template, and that was not the case. Our new goal, we're finally, there was a little bit of a holdup where we were getting all of the sections put together, but we hadn't yet figured out distribution and report completion. So we're actually working with a couple of developers. I believe they're with the DNR, with the state agency, who are creating a web form that municipality representatives can fill out online, but that is taking a bit more time to develop. So I'll still use the old reporting template still for this year's report for 2021. The new plan, and we've actually got a timeline on it now, is that by later this summer, we'll be able to send the new report template out to a couple of municipalities to pilot it, let us know how they think, what they think about it, and if it needs any tweaks. And then we're hoping that at the group meeting, the statewide group meeting in October, we'll be able to share it with everyone and hopefully get approval from all the members.
Oh,
if that's the case, then the 2022 report that I do next year will be the first one with the new template. But yeah, your memory's right, but we had a few hiccups.
Good. Not for the hiccups, but moving forward.
I have
Thanks,
a
Bill.
question.
Mm-hmm.
For that LED streetlight grant, do you know what the max amount possible is for that, or the ranges it could be?
It was I don't remember off the top of my head. I think we submitted for about $312,000 is my memory.
Okay, if you could let me know, I'd just be curious.
Yeah, I can give you an update. I'm trying to remember. I think that was it for somewhere in the range of about 350 lights, but the actual value of the grant might have been more like 200. And it's somewhere in that range. It's between like $200,000 and $350,000 is what we applied for. I don't know that they gave a maximum amount allowable. There were buckets of funds for energy efficiency, for renewable energy, and for comprehensive energy planning. And so I applied for this one in the energy efficiency bucket of funds.
Great.
It was something like $6 or $8 million available total.
Phil, does that grant require matching funds then?
This one does not. The grant with the DOT for the bike share program does. That's about a 26% matching, depending on how much you actually apply for.
Okay.
The DOT is not matching funds, no. Or
Okay.
sorry,
The LED.
the energy innovation, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to mute because I had to sneeze, but I don't have to now. Okay, thanks, Phil and Bill. All right, looks like we're coming to the end of the meeting here. Item 7D, any activities are being conducted or monitored by the commissioners. For the March meeting, I unfortunately made a scheduling error back late last year. My wife and I planned a vacation, and I didn't take in consideration the March 14th meeting. So plane tickets were bought and everything. So I talked to Chris about this. I was panicking. I woke up and I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? And so Chris, I think you volunteered to help lead that, or maybe somebody else can help with you, or Diane maybe, or.
Would you rather just reschedule it?
A March meeting?
We're in March, we're going to be talking about all of our April activities. So it's a kind of a big meeting.
Reschedule what?
The March meeting?
Oh, I thought you were on vacation.
Oh, no.
No,
I would probably die or be killed. I
Well,
mean,
we-
moving it to April?
Well, no, because April is so busy, but are you only gone for a week?
I'll be gone for 10 days, yeah. I mean, I could
what-
reschedule, yeah, most definitely.
So maybe we could do it an earlier in March or later in March. You know, maybe you could send around a doodle poll, or Phil could send around a doodle poll, and we could see what works. Do you want to try
Sure,
that?
yeah, yeah, that's an excellent idea, yeah.
And if it doesn't work, maybe Chris will step back into the chair.
Sure.
yeah,
Anytime after. the
let's look into
21st.
that. I mean, I think, just with, one of your big things, Ron, is, the annual event.
Yeah,
So if we can find another date, I think that would be ideal.
yeah, we're also talking about the dark sky and they have the presentation from those
Right.
folks. So I'll have to reach out to them to reschedule that, but I think that's okay with them.
Yeah.
What are the dates that you're not available, Ron?
The 10th through the 19th.
Well, we could do Zoom. Zoom goes just about everywhere. Where are you going, Ron?
I won't be.
I'm just
on Zoom.
kidding. Don't answer that.
Unless we're in some a port in the Virgin Islands. So
Well, March 7th might work if that's,
that's fine with me.
It works for me.
We're looking at March 7th or the 21st, it would appear.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a Monday, but if it's, either
March
one of
7th
those.
's fine with me, or the 21st. How's that for everybody else?
Both are fine.
21st would be better for me, but they both work.
Okay.
I can't do the 21st.
March might just give,
But
March
that's
7th might
right.
give you more time for planning since some of the stuff is early April. I don't know if that,
7th would be quite a bit easier for me, but I could do the 21st if needed.
So it sounds like March 7th.
Let's do that.
Could do March 7th.
Thank you, Diane. That was a great idea. I feel better.
You can go on vacation with a clear conscience.
Yeah. Okay,
That
is
is
there anything
just-
else?
That is
Go
just
ahead.
3 weeks away, so we'll have those topics to talk about, but the kind of exploring dates for the annual event and some of the conversations will be got a pretty short timeline.
Okay. All right, is there anything else?
I just wanted to mention that I continue to try to get a staff member from MMSD on the agenda for the chamber. I suggested, you might recall that I tried to get her, this is for silt reduction, and I tried to get her on the agenda for January, February, and that didn't work out. Chamber already had somebody lined up, so I thought, okay, let's plan this well in advance and let's see if we can get on the agenda for September or October, which is when most businesses are looking at hiring their snow removal businesses anyway. And I cannot get a response from Angela at the chamber. I've emailed her twice. So if anybody has a connection there, I'd be happy to take advantage of that.
I don't have a good connection.
Neither do I.
Angela is the only person I've worked with over there in the past, but it's been a little while since we've worked directly with them.
I know that Mike and Joyce in economic development are in constant contact with them, so I'm sure we can shake something loose.
How do you want to go about shaking that tree?
I can just explain to them that, we've been in contact, we've been trying to establish, a presentation with the chamber regarding salt-wise, and that, we should reach out to RCC and Diane
That
to
would
make
be
that
great.
arrangement.
That would be great. Thank you, Bill.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. All right, anything else? If not, I'd like to adjourn the meeting at 8:56, 4 minutes early.
Good job, Josh.
Yeah, good job.
Mostly Ron, let's be real, but happy it's happening.